Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to talk about a wild theory regarding how Captain America 4 Brave New World fits in the overall MCU timeline. In particular, this theory throws out the idea that Ross is actually president before Ritson. It's some wild stuff, but I think you're really going to enjoy this. So let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have an August contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. In fact, this video was an early release to members, one of the many perks that you receive. All right, so this is the MCU timeline, at least the most recent 15 entries pulled from the Disney Plus complete timeline. And thanks to the recent timeline book, we can put in the months and years for everything up to Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Those are all canon thanks to the timeline book. And then, by looking at the order on the Disney Plus timeline, as well as hints and clues in the movies and shows themselves, we can come up with these dates for the most recent 4 entries. And you can check out my videos on those movies and shows if you want to know where these dates came from. So now the question is, where does Brave New World fit in the timeline? Well, the obvious answer would be after the Marvels, because in general, Feige likes to move the storyline forward with each new movie. I mean, there are very rare movies that are earlier in the timeline. You know, Captain Marvel, Black Widow, those are prequels. But for the most part, everything moves forward. And in fact, Secret Invasion kind of hinted that we're going to see Brave New World after Secret Invasion, because in Secret Invasion, Ritson certainly seemed doomed to lose the next election. Fury said that is one real-term president stuff when he did that edict on killing all aliens. Terrible idea, right? So the guess would be that Ritson would therefore lose to Ross in the next election. And in fact, we learned from the trailers that Ross was newly elected, because Sam says, I have to admit, I'm still getting used to the new look. And Ross says, hey, they said lose the mustache or lose the election. So it seems pretty clear that he was recently elected based on what we saw in the trailer, as these are celebrations probably at his inauguration. And in fact, Marvel themselves gave us an article saying that it is a newly elected U.S. President, Thaddeus Ross, in the movie. Okay, so then how does this all work, right? So I've done videos on the presidents. You can check out a more detailed video on it. But we do know that Trump was president. He was elected president because the Luke Cage series in particular makes multiple references to him. So if we just made this simple, then you'd get Biden, then Ritson, and then Ross. But we'd be talking 2029? That would mean Captain America 4 is in 2029? Now, I did discuss some crazy thoughts. I mean, maybe Trump was blipped. Maybe Biden wasn't even president. We don't know. Maybe the blip changed the election cycle, and so Ritson was elected earlier than 2025, and so therefore Ross was elected earlier than 2029. So all of those are possibilities that could explain why Captain America 4 is in, 2027 timeframe, and he was just newly elected. So, okay, it could still work, and I have no issue if they plop it after the Marvels. However, a very creative theory is saying, what if it was actually the 2024 election that Ross won? And so in the movie, the newly elected Ross, we're seeing him in February, therefore, of 2025. So I'm going to get rid of Multiverse of Madness and scooch over Hawkeye, and we're going to place Captain America right there. So February of 2025. So does this work? Well, it works surprisingly well. Okay. So one thing we got to look at is in Wakanda Forever, which is May of 2025, we did see a news ticker showing us that President Ritson is, well, president. So, okay, that would mean Ross doesn't stay president very long, right? In fact, that would mean sometime after February, March, maybe even April at the latest, he's no longer president. Well, remember, we do see in the movie he pretty much turns into the Red Hulk in front of everyone. So, okay, that would make sense. It's probably going to be pretty rare where we would want a Hulk as president. So, all right, I could buy that. I could buy that his president term is very short. And maybe Ritson is actually his vice president. And so when he has to step down, or maybe he dies, or they think he dies, then now Ritson is president. Okay, very interesting. That could work. How about Eternals? How does this work in relation to Eternals? Well, I absolutely love this. This is so cool. So Eternals is October of 2024. And of course, in Eternals, Tiamat rises from the ocean, and then Circe, kills him by converting him to, it turns out, adamantium, right? And now that would mean these scenes in Brave New World, that's Tiamat behind them, all of these scenes are only a few months later, right? All this stuff is only a few months after he came out of the ocean. I love that. That would also mean the Global Unity Summit that we see mentioned here is only a few months after he rose out of the ocean. The Talk About Celestial Island Summit and the discovery of adamantium are all only a few months after he rose out of the ocean. I love that. It makes so much sense that we would see them, going to discover the island and fighting over it and then ultimately discovering adamantium. What are we talking here? Like 5 months later at most? Oh man, that's so cool. That might be my favorite reason to have this in February of 2025. All right, so then these are smaller things, but it's still kind of cool. She-Hulk. She-Hulk actually had, if you remember, a reference to why is there a giant statue of a man sticking out of the ocean? And from a timing standpoint, that's in April of 2025. Well, that actually works pretty well because obviously the discussion about the giant man in the ocean would be happening soon after the government was really making a big deal out of it, right? People were fighting over it. So that article makes sense. And then this is crazy. Of course, when we saw man fights with metal claws in a bar, we thought, it can't be. I mean, it sounds like it's Wolverine, but they're just being silly because we haven't even discovered adamantium yet. Well, if Brave New World is happening in February timeframe, we would have discovered adamantium. And maybe the Weapon X program could have occurred, and that actually is legit Wolverine. Now, I don't know whether I even want that to happen because I don't know whether we're going to have a 616 Wolverine yet. So this was just a silly thing in She-Hulk. I don't want to make too much out of it. The only thing I will point out is it just happens to work if Brave New World is in February of 2025. That's really my only point. I kind of doubt that is not the real Wolverine. All right, so that all worked with She-Hulk. I do need to raise, though, the one issue with this February of 2025, and it actually deals with She-Hulk. So let's stay on She-Hulk for a minute. So this is just a theory of mine, but I am wondering if the blood that Josh, who actually is the worst villain of the She-Hulk show, dude is awful. But anyway, he steals her blood, remember, after he knocks her out, and gives it to the Hulk King. So let's look at this and whether or not this actually impacts Brave New World. So the first question is, did this even happen? Because remember, in episode 9, Jennifer rewrites some of her story. She complains about the whole blood thing that seems super suspiciously close to the super soldier serum. So she's like, I don't know, I don't like that. And in particular, she says, can we not do Todd gets Hulk powers? So I had always wondered then how much, when Kevin says erasing blood plot, how much did he erase? Now, Jen specifically just wanted Todd not to get the Hulk powers. She didn't say that she wanted Josh to not steal her blood. In fact, I don't know that she knew Josh did steal her blood. She was knocked out at the time. So good news is the timeline book answered our question. So I love this, how it just scribbles out part of the plot, right? And notice it's everything from the end of episode 8 when she goes to that awards gala and gets humiliated all the way into episode 9. So then she rewrites, she handwrites it there, what she really wants to have happen. And notice she's just rewriting the Hulk King plot in episode 9. So I don't think that she erased Josh here stealing her blood. So why am I bringing it up? Well, notice he stole it in August, and I'm wondering, does the leader then use the blood to create the Red Hulk in Brave New World? Because if so, that would be a problem. Because obviously it's not until August of 2025, and yet in Captain America Brave New World, Red Hulk would be created prior to that, right? February 2025. So I kind of hope now that they don't use her blood because I'm really liking this February 2025 placement, but that would be the one issue. So besides that, though, it's looking really good. In fact, let's talk about does this work in February? In general, does it work in February? I think it does because we see people wearing warm clothing. We see the trees are just starting to get their leaves back, and those are cherry trees. Cherry trees blossom around this time each year. So February, maybe March works. Now, this shot maybe is a little later. Maybe we're all the way to April by now. The movie could go from his inauguration in January all the way to March or April because the one trees look very green. Those could be evergreens. And then notice the cherry trees are much more blossomed. So, okay, this does seem like it could work around a February, March timeframe. Plus, here's what I really love. The movie actually comes out in February 2025. This would mean it's the first movie since late into Phase 3 where it's released at the same point that it happens in the timeline of the MCU. Wouldn't that be incredible for them to actually be able to proudly say this movie happens in February of 2025 and to have the average fan go, well, yeah, of course, because that's when it's coming out. Because we all know most movies are not coming out at the same time they are in the MCU timeline. So it's just a fun little thing, but I love that. It's another reason a February of 2025 is very, very cool. Okay, so let's talk about one more interesting thing. And I do think this works, but I do want to bring it up. So remember, Ross, we've now seen in the SDCC trailer, says, I want you to rebuild the Avengers. Of course, this hasn't been released to the public, but there are photos of it, and we know what was said in this trailer. So we know he's going to rebuild the Avengers, meaning they don't exist yet, but they're going to be rebuilt, right? So how does this fit in everything that we know about the Avengers post-Endgame? So we know in April of 2024 in Shang-Chi, the Avengers are basically meeting via Zoom because, Bruce is saying, welcome to the circus to Shang-Chi. We know in July of 2024, the public certainly wants to know about the Avengers because Talos is saying, everybody keeps asking where the Avengers are, and I don't know what to say to that. So obviously the Avengers are not around at this point. In October 2024, the Eternals are talking about who's going to lead the Avengers. Captain Rogers and Iron Man are both gone, so who do you think is going to lead the Avengers? Presuming, again, the Avengers are not, in existence yet. Okay, this is all working great. December 2024, we have Rogers the Musical. That's just honoring the Avengers. So now, if Brave New World is placed in February 2025, then he's asking Sam to rebuild the Avengers at this point. It kind of works because in April of 2025, She-Hulk is discussing joining the Avengers. She's saying, her friend's saying, hey, do you want to be an Avenger? And of course, then the press is already ripping on her because it looked like she was rejected by the Avengers. She wasn't, but you know the press. So, okay, the question is, how long do the Avengers stay together? And we're not going to know until Brave New World comes out, but I'm guessing that they fall apart. So probably they were still in existence in April of 2025, and then boom, they fall apart. But we do still see the people are really interested in the Avengers because Scott Lang's book is now released, April of 2025. We see in May of 2025 down on the news ticker, he's doing his tour about the book. So that's really cool. In September 2025, Kamala Khan is honoring the Avengers at Avengers Con, right? Because she loves the Avengers. Doesn't mean they're still meeting. In fact, I'm assuming they are not meeting at this point. But she's honoring the fallen ones. Then also in July of 2026, so we've already moved into 2026, Scott is doing book readings of his book about what the Avengers did to save the world. Notice this is a book reading, not his tour. And then this is why it's important that the Avengers have to fall apart at the end of Brave New World, at least if it's in February 2025, because in November 2026, the Skrull Council assumes the Avengers don't exist. And what happens if the Avengers return? So that implies that the Avengers pretty much have been non-existent since Endgame, other than the failed attempt to revive them in Brave New World. All right, so then in November 2026, Kamala, of course, wants to join the Avengers, but she loves the Avengers. She would bring that up even if they're not meeting. Okay, so actually, I think this works. It would work in February 2025 as long as the Avengers, don't stick, as long as things fall apart by the end of the movie. So, does this also work with Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Falcon and the Winter Soldier ended in July of 2024, and this is another reason why I really like February 2025 for Brave New World, because it places us just, 6 months, 7 months afterwards? It ties Sam's story together a lot more closely, rather than if Brave New World is way into 2027, it's been almost 3 years since we've seen Sam. So, I mean, that would work, but I like it better in February 2025. So yet another reason this placement is so awesome. All right, so how does this affect the street level and political timelines? So for these timelines, I'm listing when they take place, at least I'm guessing, in the MCU timeline. These are not their release dates. And yellow means it's come out, and we know the dates. Red is just a projection. All right, so on the top, we have, the street level heroes, Daredevil, Echo, Hawkeye, Spider-Man. I don't know what's going to happen with Spider-Man 4. That was originally going to be the Kingpin in that movie. I don't know anymore if that's going to happen. So we'll see. But anyway, then here we have the political timeline of all the different things that deal with politics, obviously, and issues around that. And then here we have the Tony Stark tech timeline. So basically the damage control and the mess there. I'm really hoping Armor Wars is still coming out. I don't know. And then I'm just guessing on Ironheart that's probably a fall of 2025 show. We'll have to see. All right, so here's the key. Captain America Brave New World, we're now going to move that over here to see if that works, because here's the big question. How then does it tie to Thunderbolts? Does this also move Thunderbolts earlier in the timeline? Or does it still work being at the end of the timeline in mid-2027? So we're going to have to really wait and see how things end in Captain America Brave New World to know, if that would also pull Thunderbolts earlier. But that's a small question that we'll just have to put aside for now. But overall, I really, really like this placement. So tell me your thoughts. What do you think? Does Brave New World work better in February of 2025? Or do you think it makes more sense at the end of the timeline, sometime in probably February of 2027? That's really the question. Is it February of 2025 or is it February of 2027? Let me know your thoughts. You know I read all the comments and respond to all of them as well. And one way or another, we're going to find out our answer February of 2025. We're not going to have to wait too long before we know our answer. So let me know your thoughts on it. Also, don't forget, August contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. And there's that membership option in case you're interested in that. And I always like to bring up the Discord. Here we are talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, rewatching that to get ready for Captain America 4, etc. And you notice we have a Marvel Timelines chat, and boy, do we talk timelines in there. So love to have you join us. There's 1,600 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and we want you to be part of it. So I will leave a pinned comment so you can join the Discord. And then also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.